Welcome, YouTubers, to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, I'm going to be working out some practice problems that are going to closely mirror what you'll see on the Arithmetic Reasoning Subtest of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. In order to get the most out of today's video, I strongly encourage you to make an effort to work out as many of these practice problems on your own as possible. That is, after I read a question, you should pause the video, attempt to work the question out on your own, and then resume playing the video to check your solution. As a reminder, on the ASVAB, you're not allowed to use a calculator or a reference sheet. So as you work on this practice test, try not to make use of any of those resources. Finally, I want to mention that in the description of this video, I put timestamps. Next to the timestamp, there's going to be the topic that the question is testing. And next to the topic, there's going to be a link to a video where you can learn more about that topic. So if at any point during this video you get stuck, just take a look in the description of this video. As I said, there you can find additional resources. So all those things being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. All right, question 1 says if Manuel deposits 25% of $13,000 into a savings account, what is the amount of his deposit? So on the ASVAB, you're going to experience easy questions in the beginning of the test and harder questions as you get those easy questions correct. In light of the fact that the ASVAB is a computer adaptive test, for this practice test, I tried to mirror that. That is to say, the first half of this practice test is pretty easy, and the second half of this practice test is more challenging. But for number 1, all we do is have to figure out what 25% of 13,000 is. So that looks like this. I'm going to take 13,000 and multiply it by 25%. To do that, we write 25% in decimal form, which is 0.25. And as you can see, we're now doing multiplication involving a whole number, notably 13,000, and a decimal, notably 0.25. In order to proceed, I'm going to take this decimal in 0.25 and shift it 2 times to the right to make 0.25 just 25. So in reality, I'm working this problem out. 13,000 times 25, albeit with 2 decimals to shift back into the left at the end. So again, this is how you do multiplication with decimals. But let's go ahead and work this out. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 5 is 0. 5 times 3 is 15. Drop down your 5, carry your 1. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 is 6. Before we start multiplication with this 2, we have to drop down a 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 3 is 6. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Let's add these together. We have 0 plus 0, which is 0. 0 plus 0, which is 0. 0 plus 0, which is 0. 5 plus 0, which is 5. 6 plus 6, which is 12. Carry your 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. Bring in your 2 decimals. 1, 2. So we can see the amount that he deposits is, let me rewrite this so it's clear, $3,250, which is 25% of 13,000. So the answer to this one is C. All right, number 2 says G is making cookies. Each batch of cookies uses 3 eggs. If G has 20 eggs, and assuming he has enough of the other ingredients to make the cookies, what is the greatest number of batches that he can make? This is going to be a problem I'm going to try to solve using a proportion. Again, we're told that each batch takes 3 eggs. So on my left-hand side of the proportion, I'm going to write this. 1 batch of cookies takes 3 eggs. And on the right-hand side of this proportion, I'm going to fill in what else was given. We're told that he has 20 eggs. So as we can see, eggs is in the denominator on this left-hand side of the proportion. So I'm going to put it in the denominator on this, in the right-hand side of this proportion. So that's going to be 20 eggs. And we want to know how many batches he can make with those 20 eggs. So that's going to be X batches. And I think there's ES in batches. Don't correct me on that. So now we can solve this proportion by cross multiplication. And when I do cross multiplication, I always like to do cross multiplication involving the unknown variable first, notably x. So I'm going to do x times 3, which is 3x. And then I'm going to do 1 times 20, which is just 20. Again, anything times 1 is itself. Now to solve for x, I'm just going to divide both sides by 3. That's going to cross out, leaving us with x equals 20 over 3. Again, all fractions can be regarded as long division. So instead of being 20 over 3, we can read this as 20 divided by 3 as well. And by working this out, this will tell us how many batches he can make. 3 goes into 20 6 times without going over. 3 times 6 is 18. 20 minus 18 is 2. When we bring down a 0 here, we have to bring up a decimal. 3 goes into 20 6 times without going over. 3 times 6 is 18. And as we can see, this is just going to repeat over and over again. So this is 6 and 2/3 batches. That is to say, he can only make 6 full batches of cookies. So again, x is 6 and 2/3. Of course, x referred to batches up here, so we know this is batches. And that is that one. The greatest number of batches he can make is 6. All right, number 3 says a store stocked 150 cases of Yingling for the 4th of July weekend sale. That weekend, 72 cases were sold. What percent of the cases stocked were sold that weekend? So in this case, we're just going to do division to figure this out. We're going to do 72 divided by 150. You could probably do this one, given the answer choices, without working this out at all. And if you think about it, 75 is 50% of 150. Therefore, 72 is going to be about 50% of 150. If we look at our answer choices, we have 2%, 5%, 72%, and 48%. The closest one is 48%. Now, I'm going to work this out just to show you how to do this division. That said, just bear in mind that more often than not, you can use your answer choices to figure out some of these questions pretty quickly. But that said, let's go ahead and work this out. Again, all fractions can be regarded as long division. So we can read this as 72 over 150 or 72 divided by 150. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 150 go into 772? Doesn't we have to add a 0? And when we add that 0, we have to bring up a decimal. How many times does 150 go into 720? Well, we know it's going to be 4 times. So it's going to be 150 times 4. 0 times 4 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry your 2. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2 is 6. So 150 times 4 is 600. Now we're going to subtract 720 by 600, which is just going to be 120. Now the question is, how many times does 150 go into 120? It doesn't. That said, we're allowed to bring down a free 0. Question is, how many times does 150 go into 1200? Again, we know it's going to be 8 since we already estimated the answer. So let's go ahead and make sure that that is in fact correct. 0 times 8 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry your 4. 8 times 1 is 8. 9, 10, 11, 12. So as we can see, 150 times 8 is in fact 1200. So there is no remainder. In other words, 72 over 150 is 0.48. And in terms of a percentage, we should recognize that 0.48 is 48%. Okay, pretty straightforward problem, especially if you can use estimation to kind of know what the answer is without having to do any of this work whatsoever. All right, number 4 says Carol works at a bookstore and a restaurant. In a 28-day period, Carol worked 1/4 of the days at the bookstore and did not work 1/14 of the days. On the remaining days, Carol worked at the restaurant. How many days did Carol work at the restaurant during the 28-day period? Okay, so this one can be challenging, but we're just going to do some very basic math to figure it out. Again, we have a 28-day period in which she either works at the bookstore, doesn't work, or works at the restaurant. We're told that 1/4 of the day she works at the bookstore. So to figure out how many days that is, we can take 1/4 and multiply that by 28. This turns out to be pretty easy to do. Again, we're multiplying fraction by a whole number, notably 1/4 by 28. To do this, we can simply write 28 over 1 and multiply straight across. So this becomes 1 times 28, which is 28 over 4. 28 over 4 is 7. So in other words, 7 of the days in a 28-day period, she's at the bookstore. Okay? Now, we're told that 1/14 of the days she doesn't work. So again, we can do 1 over 14 times 28. Again, we're multiplying a fraction and a whole number. To do this, we can write the whole number over 1 to make it a fraction as well, which is going to enable us to multiply straight across. This becomes 1 times 28, which is just 28, over 1 times 14, which is 14. 28 minus 14 is 2. So we can see that in this 28-day period, she doesn't work for 2 days. Okay, and then finally, we're told that whenever she's not at the bookstore and not working, she's at the restaurant. So all we do is have to add these two together and subtract that from 28. So 7 plus 2, 7, 8, 9. 28 minus 9 is 19. Okay, so not too bad. Again, there's multiple ways to do this one, but again, it's pretty simple. Find out what 1/4 of 28 is, add that to what 1/14 over 28 is, and then take that and subtract it from 28. Okay? All right, number 5 says a map is drawn with a scale of 1 inch equals 15 miles. Nicole measured the distance to the next town as 3 inches. How many feet does she have to travel to get to the next town? Okay, so this is combining a proportion problem with a conversion problem. So let's take one thing at a time. Let's figure out how many miles 3 inches represents. And we're going to write this, which is given already, on the left-hand side of our proportion like this. 1 inch corresponds to 15 miles. We want to know what 3 inches corresponds to, and this is going to be x miles. Again, at some point we're going to have to convert this miles to feet, but let's figure out what this is in terms of feet first. And as I mentioned, I like to multiply my unknown variable first. So this is 1 times x, which is just x. And then this is 3 times 15, which is 45. So we can see that 3 inches corresponds to 45 miles. That said, this problem wants to know how many feet that is. In my conversions video, I mentioned that you do have to know how to convert feet to miles. And in 1 mile, there is 5,280 feet. That's something that you do have to know for this test. Chances are you're going to see a question involving this conversion. So to convert miles to feet, we're going to take 45 and multiply it by 5,280 like this. And take your time as you do this. This is where a lot of people make mistakes since there's a lot of mental math to do here. 0 times 5 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40, so you drop down your 0, carry your 4. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14. Carry your 1. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. Before you start multiplication with this 0, with this 4, bring down a 0. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 8 is 32. Carry your 3. 4 times 8 is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 9, 10, 11. Carry your 1. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21. Let's add this up. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then 2 plus nothing is 2. So we can see that this is 237,600 feet, which corresponds to 45 miles. So this one is 237,600. Okay, not a difficult problem, but that said, you had to be mindful of the fact that you can use a proportion to figure out the scale problem, and then you can use the conversion at the very end of the problem to convert miles to feet. All right, number 6 says to join the military, one of your friends has to lose weight. If your friend goes from 200 pounds to 185 pounds, what was the percentage of his weight loss? So this is a percent change problem. And in that video, I mentioned that the formula for percent change is actually pretty easy to use. It's percent change equals new amount minus old amount over old amount times 100. If this percent change value is positive, you know there's an increase. If this percent change amount is negative, you know there's been a decrease. So let's identify our new and old amounts and then solve accordingly. Again, their original weight is 200, so that's the old amount. Their new weight is 185. Okay, so we just had to identify those two things. Let's plug them in now. This percent change equals new amount, 185, minus old amount. It's 200 over old amount. That's 200 times 100. Okay. Now, if you wanted to make this math a little bit easier, and I would recommend doing this, you should realize that you can get rid of this 100 and 200, given that 100 divided by 100 is 1, and 100 divided by 200 is 2. So this will become 1, and this will become 2. Anything times 1 is itself. So if we simplify this first, this becomes 185 minus 200 all over 2. This makes the math a little bit easier. We should be able to do this math mentally. 185 minus 200 is negative 15. Again, that's over 2. 15 divided by 2, we should be able to do mentally as well. 14 divided by 2 would be 7. 16 divided by 2 would be 8. Therefore, 15, which is in the middle, divided by 2 is going to be 7.5. So this is going to be negative 15 divided by 2. It's going to be negative 7.5%. And again, I said negative means there was a decrease. Clearly, they decreased from 200 to 185 pounds. And as we can see, they decreased in the amount of 7.5%. So the answer to this one is B. Again, you want to be able to do these little tricks here to speed up your work. I know when I took the ASVAB, I was the last one in the testing center to go into the testing room, and I was the first one out with the highest score, just because I estimate my answers when possible, and whenever possible, I do mental math. And 15 divided by 2 is something you should be able to do in your head. All right, number 7 says you want to earn a 90% in a class. On the first 3 tests, you scored a 90%, an 89%, and a 95%. What percent would you need on the 4th test to earn a 90%? In other words, what score do you need on your 4 tests to have a 90% average in the class? So this is a question regarding averages. To find the average, you take all the data points that you're given and you add them up. So I like to remember the average formula like this. The sum of the numbers that you're given divided by how many numbers there are. Again, I could go through the statistical formula for average, but for the ASVAB, you really don't need that. Again, just sum up the numbers, divide by how many numbers there are. In this case, we know we want a class average of 90%. So we're actually given what this average amount should be. And in addition, we're given 3 of the 4 test scores, and they're right here. 1, 2, 3. This percent on the 4 test score is going to be X. It's unknown at this point. So with all those things identified, let's plug them into this formula. Again, we know you want a 90% average in this class. So in place of average, I'm going to put 90. And now we're going to sum all the data points. So that's going to be 90 plus 89 plus 95 plus that unknown 4th data point is X. Again, that's the score on your 4th test. And again, this is over the number of data points there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, including the unknown one. By figuring this out, we'll be able to solve for X. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this 4 in the denominator by multiplying both sides by 4. This crosses out over here, leaving you with just 90 plus 89 plus 95 plus X. 9 times 4 is 36. Therefore, 90 times 4 is 360. Again, mental math's important on this test. And as we can see, to find X, all we do is have to move all these things right here over to the left. But before we do that, I'm going to sum them up to make it a little bit easier. So that's going to be 90 plus 89 plus 95. This is 9 plus 5, which is 14, carrier 1. 9 plus 9 is 18. Plus 9 is 27. Again, we have 8 plus 1, 9. 9 times 3, 27. Okay? So this is 360 equals 274 plus X. And let me move back over here. To solve for X now, we're just going to subtract 274 from both sides. This crosses out over here, leaving you with just X. And so as not to make any mistakes, I'm going to actually work this out. This is 360 minus 274. As you can see, we're doing 0 minus 4 now, which we can't do. We have to borrow. I'm going to look to the left at this 6, and I'm going to take 1 away from it. So this is going to become 5. This is going to become 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 5 minus 7 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the left. This becomes 2. This becomes 15. 15 minus 7 is 8. And this X refers to the percent that you need on your 4 tests to have a 90 average in the class. As we can see, that is 86%. Okay? All right, number 8 says a traveling salesman, Jimbo, spent $140.37 on gas in July, $105.45 in August, and $186 even in September. What was the average monthly cost of Jimbo's gas? So again, this is an average problem. So to find the average that he spent per month on gas, we're going to do average equals sum over the number. Again, sum of all the cost of gas divided by how many months. And that looks like this. Average equals, again, we have 140.37 plus 105.45 plus 186. Again, over how many data points there are, there's 1, 2, 3. By doing this arithmetic over here, we'll figure out what this is, or what this average was. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, so as not to make any mistakes, I'm going to do this math off to the side. I have 140, 37, 105, 45, and then 186 even, and we can add 2 zeros there just to make it easy. As you can see, we're adding 3 decimals together, so the very first thing I'm going to do is drop down this decimal in place. 7 plus 5 is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Carrier 1. This is 4 plus 4, which is 8. 5 plus 6, which is 11, so drop down your 1, carrier 1. 8 plus 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, plus 1, 13. Carrier 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So we can see that this becomes average equals 431.82 divided by 3. And now we got to do this division in order to figure out what this is. It's not as hard as you think. So this becomes 431.82 divided by 3. And let me fix that. All right, now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 4? That's 1 time. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract. 4 minus 3 is 1. Drop down this 3. Drop down this 1. Drop down this 8. And drop down this 2. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 13? That's going to be 4 times, given that 4 times 3 is 12. Let's subtract. 13 minus 12 is 1. Drop down this 1. Drop down this 8. Drop down this 2. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 11? That's going to be 3 times. So that's going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. And now we can bring this decimal up in place. 11 minus 9 is 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 2. Drop down this 8. Drop down this 2. Now we're asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 28 without going over? 3 times 10 would be 30. 3 times 9 would be 27. So this is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. 28 minus 27 is 1. Drop down this 2. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 3 times 4 is 12. So we can see there's no remainder. So this answer is average equals 143.94. So that's the average he spent on gas per month, which we can see is A. Again, you do have to be pretty good at doing long division involving decimals for the ASVAB. Let me just say this. If this decimal was on the outside of this division bracket, you would had to have shifted it such that the number became a whole number. But that said, since it was inside the division bracket, we just proceeded as normal. Okay, so that was that one. All right, number 9 says Natalie spends $40 per month for a bus pass. If she bought a car, she estimates she would spend about $95 per month on a car payment, $20 per month for parking, and $70 per month for gas and maintenance, and $60 for car insurance. How much does she save per month by taking the bus? So we know she spends $40 a month for the bus. So that's all we need to know about that one. And my pen is starting to act up a little bit. That said, we know she has all these fees associated with car ownership. And let's just list them out. She has $95 payment, $20 parking fee, $70 for gas and maintenance. $60 for car insurance. To figure out how much cheaper it is to just take the bus, we're going to add all these up and subtract it by 40. So let's go ahead and do so. This is 5 plus 3, 0, so it's just 5. Then we have 9 plus 2, which is 11, plus 7 plus 6, which is 13. 11 plus 13 is going to be 24. So as we can see, it cost $245 per month to own a car, whereas it cost her $40 per month for her bus pass. So we're just going to do 245 minus 40. You can do that mentally. It's just going to be 205. In other words, by not owning a car, she's saving herself $205 per month. Again, pretty easy question. I just threw it in there to see if you would overthink it. All right, number 10 says a swimming pool can be filled by pipe A in 3 hours and by pipe B in 6 hours, i.e. Each pump working on its own. If both pumps are started at 9 a.m., at what time will the swimming pool be filled? So this is a combined rate problem, and in that video where I talk about combined rates, I mentioned that you can solve any of these problems using this generic formula, T over A plus T over B equals 1, where T refers to the time it takes both things to complete the task by itself. So in this case, T would refer to the time it takes pump A and pump B working together to fill the swimming pool. A refers to the time it takes one thing to complete the task by itself. So we can let pipe A be A, and that means it takes pipe A 3 hours to complete the job by itself. And B refers to the time it takes the other thing to complete the job by itself. So we can let pipe B simply be B. And 1 refers to the task that they're completing together. In this case, it's filling up the swimming pool. So with those things identified, let's plug them in accordingly. We have T over A is 3 hours. B is 6 hours. And they complete the filling up of one swimming pool. So as you can see, we're now adding two fractions, albeit with different denominators. In order to add fractions, these denominators have to be the same. And it should be pretty clear that if we multiply 3 by 2, that will become 6. That said, we're also going to have to do it to its numerator. So this is going to become 2 times t, or 2t over 6, plus t over 6 equals 1. Now that the denominators are the same, we can go ahead and add these pretty easily. This becomes 2t plus t equals 1. 2t plus t is 3t over 6 equals 1. And it should be clear now that we're just solving for t. To do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by 6 to get rid of it in the denominator. This crosses out, leaving me with 3t equals 1 times 6, which is 6. Divide both sides by 3 to get t by itself. This is t equals 6 over 3 R2. In other words, it takes these pumps, if they're working together, 2 hours to fill the swimming pool. So if they start at 9, it takes 2 hours from 9 to fill it. That's 9 to 10, 10 to 11. So by 11 a.m., that swimming pool will be filled if both pumps are working together. Okay, so that was that one. All right, number 11 says, during a holiday sale, Bob bought a shirt that was on sale for 25% off the original price. He also used a coupon that gave him an additional 25% off the sale price of the shirt. The original price of the shirt was $60. What is the new price of the shirt before tax? So in this case, we're going to have to apply multiple discounts to this shirt in order to figure out what its final sale price is. So that's going to look like this. Original price minus 25% off. This will give us our first sale price. Then we're going to take that first sale price and take another 25% off, which will give us our final sale price. You cannot take these two discount amounts and combine them. That is to say, you can't go 25%, 25% is 50%, original price minus 50% as the final sale price. You have to do these one by one, okay? So let's take this original price of 60 and apply our first discount of 25%. So that's going to be 60 times 0.25. 60 times 0.25, as you can see, is a whole number multiplied by a decimal. In order to proceed, we have to rewrite this decimal such that it's also a whole number. So to do that, I'm going to shift its decimal place 2 times to the right. So this is 60 times 25. Albeit with 2 decimals to shift back into the left at the end. 5 times 0 is 5. 6 times 5 is 30. Before you start multiplication with this 2, add a 0 placeholder. 2 times 0 is 0. 6 times 2 is 12. This is 0 plus 0, 0 plus 0. 3 plus 2, that's 5. 1 plus nothing is 1. Bring in your 2 decimals, 1, 2. So we can see that the first discount of 25% is in the amount of $15. So to figure out what that first sale price is, we're going to do 60 minus 15. 0 minus 5 we can't do, so we have to borrow. This becomes 5. This becomes 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So the first sale price after this first discount of 25% is applied is $45. Now we're going to take $45, which is this first sale price, and subtract out the other discount of 25%. So that's going to look like this, except it's going to be 45 times 0.25. And as we did over here, we're going to shift this decimal in 0.25 to make it a whole number as well. So we're going to shift it 2 times to the right. This becomes 45 times 25, albeit with 2 decimals to shift to the left. 5 times 5 is 25, carry your 2. 4 times 5 is 20, plus 2 is 22. Before you start multiplication with this 0, before you start multiplication with this 2, bring in a 0. 5 times 2 is 10, carry your 1. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. All right, let's add this up. 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 0 is 2. 9 plus 2 is 9, 10, 11. Bring in your 2 decimals. So we can see the second discount was in the amount of $11.25. And now we have to subtract that from our first sale price. So that's going to be 45 minus 11.25. Again, we can bring in a decimal and 2 zeros here if we think that's helpful. Many of you could probably do this in your head, but let's work it out off to the side. 0 minus 5 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. We can't borrow from this 0, so we're going to have to borrow from this 5. This is going to become 4. This is going to become 10. We're going to borrow one more time. This is going to become 9, and that's going to become 10. Drop down your decimal in place while you're at it. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 is 7. 4 minus 1 is 3. 4 minus 1 is 3. So we can see the final sale price after 2 25% discounts are applied is $33.75, which is C. If you combine these discounts into one discount of 50%, you would have got this question wrong. You cannot do that. You have to do the work separately. All right, number 12 says your neighbor's swimming pool is 30 feet long, 12 feet deep. Number 12 says your neighbor's new swimming pool is 30 feet long, 12 feet wide, and 8 feet deep. If your neighbor decides to only fill it up to 7 feet, what volume of water is in the pool? So it should be obvious that we're dealing with a rectangular prism here. So let me go ahead and draw that out if you need it. And the volume, to find the volume of a rectangular prism, use the formula length times width times height, which looks like this. Length times width times height. In this case, we know the length of the pool, as we're told, is 30 feet. It's 12 feet wide. And although the height of the pool is 8 feet, we know we're only filling it up with 7 feet of water. Okay, so it's just going to be filled up to about that line right there. So to find the volume of water in this pool, we're just going to take these three things and multiply them together, notably 30 by 12 by 7. So let's go ahead and do this. Again, take your time as you work out this multiplication so you don't make any mistakes. I'm going to do it off to the side. I'm going to do 30 times 12 first. 2 times 0 is 0. 3 times 2 is 6. Before you start multiplication with this 1, bring down a 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 3 is 3. This is 300 plus 60, which is 360. So this becomes 360 times 7, which we'll go ahead and work out right now. 360 times 7. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 6 is 42. Bring up your 4. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 plus 4 is 25. So we can see the volume of water in this pool, which is only filled up with 7 feet of water, is 2520 feet cubed. Again, volume's always in regard to cubed. Squares is always, area is always squared. So this is 2520 cubic feet, which is B. All right, number 13 says normal body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When your body loses heat faster than it can produce it, it becomes hypothermic. And this occurs when body temperature falls below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. At what body temperature does hypothermia occur in terms of Celsius? Use Celsius equals 5 over 9 times F minus 32, where F refers to Fahrenheit. So for this one, all we do is have to plug in Fahrenheit in place of F. So again, Celsius equals 5 over 9 times Fahrenheit minus 32. Let's go ahead and plug in Fahrenheit. Again, the body temperature at which you become hypothermic is 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is 5 over 9 times 95 minus 32. According to the order of operations, we do what's in parentheses first. So we're going to have to do 95 minus 32 first. 5 minus 2 is 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. So this becomes 5 over 9 times 63. That is, we're doing multiplication involving a fraction and a whole number. One way to do this is to rewrite this whole number as a fraction by placing it over 1. So this becomes 5 over 9 times 63 over 1. Before we do this multiplication, we should realize that 63 is divisible by 9. So I can do 9 divided by 9, which is 1, and 63 divided by 9, which is going to be 7. Now we can multiply straight across. This becomes 5 times 7, which is 35. 1 times 1, which is 1. 35 over 1 is 35. So we can see the body temperature at which you become hypothermic is 35 degrees centigrade. And so that was that one. Pretty straightforward, just a test of your ability to do subtraction and some multiplication involving fractions. All right, number 14 says, the state fair is a popular field trip destination. This year, the senior class at high school A and the senior class at high school B both planned trips there. The senior class at high school A rented and filled 8 vans and 8 buses with 240 students. High school B rented and filled 4 vans and 1 bus with 54 students. Every van had the same number of students in it as did the buses. Find the number of students in each van and each bus. So to solve this one, we're going to need a system of equations in light of the fact we're trying to figure out two variables at once, notably how many students are in each van, how many students are in each bus. So the hardest part is going to be to convert this word problem into that system of equations, but I want to get started by labeling what we have. Again, we know they both took vans and buses, so I'm going to let V refer to vans and B refer to buses. We know high school A filled 8 vans and 8 buses with 240 students. High school B filled 4 vans and 1 bus with 54 students. So as a system of equations, that looks like this. High school A filled 8 vans plus 8 buses with 240 students, whereas high school B filled 4 vans and 1 bus with 54 students. And just like that, I wrote my system of equations that I can now use to figure out what each of these amounts were in each van and bus. That said, we have to figure out what method we're going to use to solve this system of equations. I'm going to use the elimination method. That is, I'm going to multiply one of these equations by a constant such that it's going to let me eliminate one of the variables. You should see that if I multiply this second equation by -8 and add it to this first equation, that will cause the b variable to drop out. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do that off to the side here. This is 8v plus 8b equals, and my pen is starting to act up. And as I said, we're going to multiply everything in this second equation by a constant of -8 to get rid of this 8b here. So that's going to be 8 times 4v, which is -32v plus -8 times 1b, which is going to be -8b equals -8 times 54. I'm going to work that off to the side. That's 54 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32, carry your 3. 5 times 8 is 40, 41, 42, 43. Again, this is negative times a positive, so this is -432. So I said we're going to add both these equations together. Negative or 8 plus -32v is going to be -24v. 8 minus 8 is nothing. Then we have to figure out what 240 minus 432 is. That looks like this. 432 minus 240. But we know the result's going to be negative since this 432 is bigger than 240. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 4 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. This becomes 3. This becomes 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. So this is -192. Divide both sides by -24 to get v by itself. This becomes v equals -192 divided by 24. Now, this is where estimation can come in. First, let's point out that negative divided by negative is going to be positive. So this is going to be positive. But that said, I know 25 goes into 200 8 times. Therefore, I know 24 is going to go into 192 about 4 times. So let's see if that is the case. 192 times, or 24 times 8. Let's see what that gives us. 4 times 8 is 32, carry your 3. 8 times 2 is 16, 17, 18, 19. So Negative 192 divided by negative 24 is, in fact, 8. That is to say, each van can hold 8 students. Let's take a look at our answer choices. Only one of those has 8 students per van, so we know the correct answer is A. That said, let's keep working this out. Once you get to this point and you've solved for one of the variables, the only other thing you have to do is to take this amount and plug it into one of the original equations. Again, here are the original equations right here. And I'm going to plug it into this bottom one since it's a little easier to work with. This is 4v plus 1b equals 54. In place of v, we can plug in 8 since we know what v is. So this is 4 times 8 plus 1b equals 54. 4 times 8 is 32. So this is 32 plus 1b equals 54. Subtract 32 from both sides to get b by itself. So this becomes 54 minus 32. 4 minus 2 is 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. And my pen is acting up still. So this is 1b, or just b, equals 22. So as we can see, a van can carry 8 students, whereas a bus can carry 22 students, which is A. We used a system of equations to figure that out. And once we wrote our system of equations, we got rid of one of the variables via the elimination method, which gave us the answer to one of the variables. Then we plugged that answer into one of the original equations to get the other variable. System of equations can be challenging, but that said, you probably will see them on the ASVAB. All right, number 15 says, if you flip a coin 3 times in a row, what is the probability you will get 3 heads in a row? Okay, so this looks like this. Probability of heads and heads and heads. Again, when you flip a coin, you have one of 2 choices. You're either going to get heads or tails. So in this case, on your first flip, your probability of getting heads is 1/2. We're going to multiply that by your second flip. Again, your second flip, your odds of getting heads is 1/2. And on your third flip, your odds of getting a heads again is 1/2. By multiplying these 3 together, we'll figure out what your odds of getting heads 3 times in a row is. And this is pretty easy to do. Again, we're just multiplying fractions, so we're going to multiply straight across. That is, we're going to do 1 times 1 times 1, which is just 1. And then 2 times 2, which is 4, times 2, which is 8. So your odds of getting heads 3 times in a row is 1/8. I do have a video on basic probability. So if for some reason you struggled following along here, take a look in the description of this video and click the link to that video on basic probability. All right, number 16 says, if you're in a car traveling 70 miles per hour, how far will you travel in 45 minutes? So we should realize that we have all the elements of the distance formula. That is, distance equals rate times time. As you can see, we have our rate of 70 miles per hour. We have a time of 45 minutes, and we want to know how far you'll travel, which is our D. So let's plug these things in and solve accordingly. Again, we want to figure out how far you're going to travel, so we're trying to solve for D. So we're going to leave that as D. We know the rate is 70 miles per hour, so we'll plug that in place of R. And we know the time is in terms of minutes. But let's take a look. We're given a rate in terms of miles per hour, but we're only given time in terms of minutes. In order to do this math, we're going to have to convert this minutes to hours so that this comes out correctly. Again, 45 minutes is the same as 45 over 60 of an hour. And this reduces to 3/4. Again, 45 minutes is 3/4 of an hour. So in light of the fact that this is in miles per hour, we have to convert this to be in hours as well. So this is 70 times 3/4. As you can see, we're doing multiplication involving a whole number, notably 70, and a fraction, notably 3/4. To do this, we could rewrite 70 as a fraction as well by placing it over 1. So this becomes 70 over 1 times 3/4. And now we just can multiply straight across. This becomes 70 times 3, which is 210 over 4. And now we can work this out. This is 210 divided by 4. 4 doesn't go into 2. That said, 4 goes into 21. What is it? 5 times without going over. 4 times 5 is 20. 21 minus 20 is 1. Drop down this 0. 4 goes into 10. 2 times without going over. 4 times 2 is 8. Subtract. 10 minus 8 is 2. Now we have to bring down a 0 and bring up a decimal. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. So there's no remainder. In other words, this is 52.5 miles. In other words, if you're traveling at 70 miles per hour for 45 minutes, you will go 52.5 miles, which is C. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Admittedly, this was a pretty easy practice test. So I hope you found it helpful regardless. If you like the content I'm creating, please subscribe to my channel. In addition, you're more than welcome to leave some feedback in the comments section below. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose. Konnichiwa.